What up, YouTube? I am your host, Mediocre Tutorials and Reviews, back in here with yet one more video, joined today by a very special returning guest, Tate.
Hey.
What up?
What up?
How
Nothing much. I'm good.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to enjoy ourselves today with a good old-fashioned discussion about feminism.
Okay.
And how it destroyed the black family. This is real.
This is tough.
This is heavy.
Yeah.
We're about to go in. Shout out to you, Patreon supporter, Michael Bennett. Thank you, sir, for sending over this content. Now, listen, we're going to do a in-the-moment reaction. We haven't looked at this video at all, but I feel like it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, I'm already triggered, Michael. Just by the title.
She's already triggered. So we about to go in. Anything to say before we get started?
No.
Let's just go in.
Let's just go.
Without further ado.
My position is that the black woman's disrespect and rebellion against the leadership and the authority of the black man is a direct cause of the breakdown in our black family structure. Now, of course, there are many black people who consider those fighting words because as black women, we have never been subject to the kind of examination that our men have been subject to since we have been here. We have been somewhat protected and shielded from any kind of critiquing about our personal behavior, whereas our men have always been up for examination. The book is not an attack on black women. I have never said that all black women do everything that I list in my book. None of us have lived long enough to do everything that I list in the book, but most of us do some of the things that I've listed in my book. And I do say that it is not because of generalizations that we are all victimized by some of the negative patterns of behavior in the book, but the book just represents our collective contribution. This is some of everything that we have done or that we do daily that contributes to the breakup of our relationship, the destruction of our man, and the failure of our children to be able to function. They did not tell us that all of that being my own person and I'm independent would lead to separation, loneliness, celibacy, and lesbianism. They didn't tell us that if you give up the man, you're going to take one of these things and it's worse and it will destroy your nation. They didn't give us that information. They made us think that it was some kind of glorified position to brag about the fact that I got my own job, my own credit card, my own car, so I don't need no man. I don't even know how we got that mixed up. Ain't none of that got nothing to do with being with no man. You know, we have some serious relationship problems that nobody has been able to address.
Whoa. Wow. There was so much. We could only watch like 50 seconds before we had to stop it.
Let's have an initial reaction based off what she was saying. Let me paraphrase real quick in order to make sure that we're talking about the same points. She just hit us with a whole bunch of information. She's saying they did not tell us what the outcome would be by this INDEP, right? This Miss Independent, when all that stuff.
I'm scared to correct you on the spelling, but
I spelled it wrong. It's been a while since I heard
it. I'm so vulnerable right now. I'm so vulnerable.
Because of what
I'm
you
in
hear?
Yes, I'm in a vulnerable place. I'm just gonna say that.
You grew up in the era of listening to songs like that. You grew up in the era of listening to media, push an idea of a strong, independent woman. But then there's concepts that within that might break apart a man and a woman. I just want to hear your initial reactions to what she's saying versus the things and the images that were showed to you and the videos that's been showed to you through media throughout a child of pushing a narrative, and especially from your perspective as a black woman. And I think that that's key because what you hear a lot of this ideals of feminism is not made for our black woman. It was made for the Caucasian woman.
Okay.
So I wanted your initial reactions based off of that.
Okay, that was a long question, so I'm gonna apologize if I don't get to all of that. I think my initial reaction to this was thank God for having a family.
Okay.
A 2-parent household. And it wasn't even like my mother didn't raise me, my father didn't raise me, my grandparents raised me.
Yep.
And so I'm gonna consider them a 2-parent household for now. Because I was able to see a healthy interaction between husband and wife, between man and woman in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So it helps me to compartmentalize the images and the messages that I receive from the media, right? So I listen to songs like INDEPENDENT. Do you know what that means?
Coming out my throat.
And for me, it just meant it is important for me to have my own, but it doesn't mean that me having my own negates the importance of someone adding value to it.
I see.
And I think that a lot of times we do misinterpret what being independent means, but I don't necessarily agree with what she said as just being independent is wholly damaging to the interaction between Black man and Black woman. It is not. I don't think that. I just think a healthy understanding of what it means to be independent is what we need. But a lot of times we don't have the privilege and opportunity to experience building a life with a Black man because most of them are where?
In jail.
Right. So we don't get to practice that. You know what I mean? And we have there's a lot of brokenness that we have to attend to that doesn't, and we don't know how to deal. In our efforts to be independent, we don't know how to really deal with someone who might be dependent in areas that we are not.
Okay. I mean, so let me give a brief reaction to that. I think, what I was trying to highlight before is that, we are all products of our environment. There's a select few of us that have the opportunity to kind of step out of the environment to kind of look down on it and see kind of what's going on. I think within that, there's still a lot of people that are in the matrix. And there's my experiences, I've come across a lot of Black women that, have the mantra of, I don't need a man.
Right.
I don't need no one to do else for me. I got it. I got this, and maybe it's just trendy. Like maybe it's just the trendiness in saying things like that.
Sure.
But I do think that there's ideologies within that, my response to that is, well, if you don't need me, then.
But why do I have to need,
peace.
Why can't I just want you? Why do I have to need you?
Well, here's the thing. So what I find attractive is someone that doesn't necessarily need me, right? They can do for themselves, and they don't, right? Like they don't need me to always be around to do, right? Like, so I think dudes with a much more traditional view might feel like they want a woman to need them. That's a way more traditional view. This is 2020. We got to upgrade for that.
Right, for sure.
But I do think that there's ideologies that have been instilled into young Black women regarding kind of being away from and the power of not uniting with another Black man, not to mention that the ones that they then choose to unite with usually are not the best options for them. Like you said, there's a bunch that's in jail. Actually, I was looking at a statistic the other day that said there was more Black men in college than there are in jail.
Which is great.
Yeah.
That's not the messaging that we get.
I get it. Yeah, there's more Black men walking around than more Black women walking around than Black men.
Oh, for sure. Wait, so say that again? You said there are more Black men in college than there are Black men in jail?
Yes.
Okay. I thought the statistic was there. Okay. I thought it was reversed.
So they're still there.
Yeah.
But listen, she has a fire-filled tongue. I want to hear more. I want to hear more of what Shahrazad Ali is saying. So let's go back into it and let's come back. Okay?
Okay, we got it.
Press us on because everybody wants to pretend that this is not going on. Over 60% of our women are single, widowed, separated, or divorced. They don't have a man. I just came out of Florida, and they got a housing complex that the Urban League built, which is a Black organization that is for women and children only. They say they don't allow any men in there. I didn't have time to deal with it, but I talked about them real bad. That's the silliest program I've ever heard of. You know them women that had men if they got a bunch of children. They need fathers. They need protection. We hear about the drug problem that we have in our projects across the country. It's one of the major places that we have a drug problem. You know, we talk about the great strength that we have as black women. Well, the welfare department don't rent government apartments to single black men. Those apartments belong to black women who are allowing this to go on in their home. We have not looked at what part of the responsibility do we share. Yes, black men sell a lot of drugs, and a lot of us black women get the money from them drugs and buy some of these fancy clothes we wear. Drive around in some of these fancy cars. He is not doing these things alone and without support from us, whether they are good or bad. See, we have a lot of power. We are very strong women. I'm saying that we're using our strength in the wrong direction. We're using it to tear our man down, tear our nation down, instead of building it up. Having an education and a job does not necessarily mean you have a successful life. I keep telling black women that to raise a child, they say, well, I provided with food, clothing, and shelter. That's not raising a child, that's maintaining one.
Damn.
There's always so much that she says.
So one thing that she said is, just because you have a successful job.
Yeah, I wrote that down.
Doesn't mean...
in
education doesn't mean that you have a successful life.
I agree with that.
What do you think defines a successful life?
I think the definition of success is relative, right? I mean, everybody has their own set of values, and the success at which you attain and live up to those values and standards and belief defines whether or not you believe you have succeeded. And I think that our exterior messages, like the messaging we get from the news and social media and, you know, music, whatever, you know, we allow into our systems helps to build those values. But that's why it's just very important that children grow up with parents who are healthy, right? Like, because unhealthy parents can pass on unhealthy practices to their children. Nice. So just because you have two parents doesn't mean you are healthy. And just because you grew up in a two-parent home doesn't mean that you had a successful nuclear family unit, right? So again, it's all relative. Like, success is relative. And why we define our lives by whether or not we've attained a standard of success is weird too. Like, why can't I just be happy? And whatever that means is whatever that means for me.
Well, I think because the problem is that people allow other people to define what makes them happy. Absolutely. And I think that's what she's getting at. Yeah. It's turning off the programming and understanding, you know, what are the components, right? Like, I asked you what makes a successful life, and I think you nail the component of it is to say it's kind of dependent upon what's true for you. Right. But I think a lot of people don't understand what's true for them. Right. I think they just kind of live by what is defined for them or what their parents told them to do or what, you know, it's like they're on the railroad of life and it's a track and it's a pattern, and they get new information introduced to them and it's, you know, INDEPE season, right? Like, and then that's what it is. And then they go up and they're doing those things. And then, you know, they might look back later on in life and was like, well, you know, this dude who I met, you know, when I was 27, 25 or what have you, he was a good dude, but I chose to, he was too good for me. And I chose to deselect him for XYZ reason. But it's okay because I'm a strong, independent woman. And that's fine. And if that's how you defined it at that time, then that was your decision. But I do think that there's components within that media might tell you, which is inevitably not what's best for you in a successful life. Yes. And because you made that decision at 25, 20, what have you, you made that decision at that time, but it wasn't what was best, potentially, because you have not done the correct homework in assessing what makes you intrinsically happy.
I agree with that. And I also think that it's important to communicate to the viewing audience the difference between like being dependent, like having a dependency, and being codependent. And I think that like being independent isn't necessarily indicative of a lack of being codependent means I cannot function without this relationship, right?
Yep.
Right? So being independent is kind of the opposite of that. Like, I can function. I can support myself. I can live, you know, at this level of life without this relationship. I don't need this relationship to survive. I want this relationship, and because I want the relationship, I'm depending on this man in some way, right? Whether it is to help me raise the children that we've birthed as a result of the relationship, whether it is to ease the load of, you know, having to do all of these maintenance things in my house, like having to learn how to do it and do it all the time, you know, whether it is to provide a level of support emotionally, whether I need someone to be able to pour into me because I can't always just find sources on my own, like, you know what I mean? I need someone to help me believe in myself. You know, I believe in myself to a certain degree, but like having someone else pour into me may take me to that next level, right? Like, I've reached a climax where I am on my own, and this person will literally help me go into my next. But it doesn't mean that I need them, that I'm codependent on them. You know, I can be successful without them. And I think that is what a healthy definition of independence is. I think unhealthy definitions of independence, unhealthy messages about what independence is what we have been bombarded with in the media, and maybe what she's speaking to.
I agree with you.
Okay. Here we are.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
You okay?
All right.
Wow. I'm going to say you learned all that via the last video that we did. So I'm just going to take all credit.
Oh, fool. You're so dumb. I cannot.
All right. You ready to go back in?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right.
Those rules have not worked for us. The white woman's liberation movement, we don't have anything to do with that. We have not been under the control of the black man for over 500 years, so what do we have to get liberated from them from? They haven't been our boss. That's the white woman and her man. They're going through that, and that's their business. We don't have any business being in that. They only introduced it to break down the civil rights movement. Civil rights movement started with the black man, the black woman, and the black child standing together, trying to plead for freedom, justice, and equality, and more benefits in the country that they had built. They threw the white woman in there with the women's liberation movement and made it a woman against man thing.
All right. God damn.
No, I literally have to take notes. This is crazy.
She is red pill as fuck.
Like, did she just say that? Is that what she just said?
Feminism was created to break down the civil rights movement. God damn.
That's some real conspiracy shit.
Let's pressure test that though.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm down.
You know, let's pressure test that. Feminism was created to break down the civil rights movement. I don't know if that's true. Because feminism is irrespective of race.
Right. I agree.
It's irrespective of race.
I agree.
I think there's components of feminism that just drives us further apart. I absolutely agree with that, but I think it's a movement that has affected us irrespective of race.
Agree.
Now,
I think the movement is necessary, right? Because when we look at, and that's, I think, one of the things I didn't agree with her when she was talking about black women and black men and our experiences, and I think she may have placed the black male experience above the black female experience and saying like the black males have a harder time or have had a harder time historically. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I agree with that. And I think a feminist movement allows me to oftentimes, right, like I identify with my black self a lot. Mm-hmm. And I think the Kavanaugh hearings really kind of hit me hard because in my identification with my black self, my identification with my female woman self kind of falls subservient to that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think feminism is important because it allows me to dive deep into what it means to be a woman, again, irrespective of what color I am. Like we share an experience, white women and black women. Mm-hmm. Then when you think about the black woman experience versus the black male experience, and I'm using versus for lack of a better term here. I'm not saying that they're pit against each other, should be pit against each other. I'm just saying that that's a double negative when you think about like the American experience, right? Because when you think about the hierarchy of society, it's the white male. Black male is before black female in that.
Let me bring it back to I think a different perspective than what you're thinking about feminism.
Okay.
I think the components of feminism that Shahrazad Ali is talking about is the ones that say women can do it just as well as men. And I think what she's highlighting is very specific instances where you need both.
Yeah.
You need both.
Okay.
I think your definition of how you put in feminism in order to come up to a summary of the Kavanaugh hearing is different than what she's saying.
Okay.
I think what she's saying is there's components of it where, you hear, maybe a single black woman saying that she doesn't need a man to help raise her son. And part of what I've been saying on this channel and part of, is like, you need a man to raise a man. Now, it's not to say that men are not raised well without a man. I think many, right? But like their idea and their view of and how they see different things happening, they could attribute some of those things happening within their own spirit, right? And it's not realistic for the biology of that young man. But it's just like, I was looking at a video the other day, and it was this doctor or veterinarian describing that there was this animal, I think it was a cat, and the mama cat got hit by a car, the legs were broken, right, on the cat, but was pregnant, ended up having a litter of healthy kittens. What they noticed is that the kittens, they were all healthy. And the mama kitten was like paralyzed from like the waist down, so the legs weren't moving. Okay. The kittens were moving like the mom, even though their legs worked. And I say that to say that based on what you see is probably how you're going to more internalize information around you. Sure. Right. And my experience and the things that I would teach a young man or woman is different than the things that you might teach a young man or woman. Right.
Absolutely. So. I definitely think, but I think what I was getting to was like feminism is a very broad kind of thing, right? And I do think that, the decisions that the media and people make in picking out points of feminism and spreading that and propagandizing that might be intentional in an effort to destroy. But that's why I feel like it's important. Like for feminism for me is this, but that's not. It's not the messaging that we receive, obviously, because she never talked about feminism in that way. She's talking about the feminism that is damaging, versus the feminism that actually is positive.
But I love the way that you summed it up, and that the viewers can see it being summed up completely differently. Yeah. But using the same word. Yeah. And I think like a lot of times what I see is that people are arguing off of a term, but then they have totally different interpretations and life experiences based off of that same exact term. So it's almost like you have to set the definition up front before you can have a conversation about it. And
not at full understanding, right? People don't come from a full understanding of what certain terms are. They literally just come from whatever messaging they've been receiving about the term,
You know what it's like?
I just wanted to bring a different perspective because feminism is positive in a way.
I like to break analogies on this channel. It's like trying to have a goddamn conversation regarding like who's the best rapper of all time. But both of the people who are having the conversation have heard different works from each artist. So so your point, your grounding of how you're coming up to it is different because you both have different data points. You have different experiences with the artist. You have one went to certain concerts and the other one different. So it's hard to come up to a unless you're going from objective factors like album sales or something like that. So
that created a big separation between black men and black women because then everybody started going for self. Then they bring the welfare system in and tell us in order to feed and clothe and house our children, we have to give up our man. You have to put the man out of the house. When the white farm wife goes to the government for subsidy for the farm, they don't tell her to get rid of the farmer. They keep that family together. But in the black community, they make it a requirement because they want to keep endorsing into the black community that the black man is no good and that he is not deserving of respect. He is not deserving of us letting him give us any protection or instruction and that we are better than them. The major responsibility that the black woman has had on the earth for the trillions of years that we have been here has been one of nutrition and birthing children. Those two things have a great deal to do with the survival of any people, the reproduction of the nation, and feeding them the proper food so that they can live. Those are very important jobs. Those are very powerful positions because it puts us in a position to decide who's going to live or die and how slow they're going to die by what we feed them. We have a very powerful position. That's not a small role that we play. We have just been taught to misrepresent and misuse that power. The people who we have been counting on to give us the truth about how to get along have failed. The white people don't know how to get along. They don't have that information themselves. They don't get along with nobody on earth. So they didn't have no information to impart to us about how we're supposed to get along. They changed their relationship rules at will. We have, tons of black children around this country that I hear from who have grown up traumatized by the fact that they were referred to as the outside child. When we were having children like that, they called it illegitimate children until the white woman started having them, and now it's single parenting. See, they changed the rules according to what they're doing. So I've called on our people to change them depending on what we want to do, what our needs are. There's another need that has not been addressed in our community, because nobody will deal with it, and that's one that God did not create three sexes. We only have men and women. Now, I have not said that we should reject the sisters who try and act like men and the men who try and act like women. I'm not saying to reject them from among us, but they need to be taught. We don't have to accept that as some kind of normalcy because that's not normal.
All right. So let's get back in there.
Every time I have to take a deep breath.
Damn. I don't know what year this is from. I've never heard of her, but goodness gracious. Would you describe her as knowledgeable?
Yes. I would describe her as knowledgeable.
I would too.
I would say that in some ways, this video could also be destructive, though.
Which ways?
If you can't compartmentalize what she's saying appropriately, it could be a little destructive.
Do you think it's destructive because it's too truthful?
No, because I think that it is truthful, but I also think that it is. Sometimes you need a far left. I'm just saying far left. I'm not saying she's being political in any way, but when we talk about a spectrum of ideas, right? Like you have one set of beliefs and you have another set of beliefs, and sometimes you need someone from that far end of the opposite spectrum to speak and have power, speak truth to their power, speak their truth to power, and to allow people to consider.
But if you think it's knowledgeable as well as truthful, what components might be destructive? Is it that it's so different than information that we hear in media today?
No, I think that, right, like when we were talking about feminism, I'm just taking it back to that, like she's coming from one particular perspective, one definition, right? She's coming from one perspective, one definition, one experience, or a collective experience, but not the whole, right? So it's partially truthful, but it doesn't mean it's false. It just means it's not the entire story. She's coming from one perspective, and it's needed. Just because it could be destructive doesn't mean that it's not needed. I think it's needed, but I think that it has to be served with the idea that this is not the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God. This is a perspective.
What part about this perspective doesn't sit well? Because everything that she's saying, except for that feminism was created to destroy the black community or civil rights movement, I think she said. I don't agree with that one, but other components of what she's saying, like it just speaks. And what's crazy about this is that this video looks like it's in the 90s or something like that. So this is probably a 20-year-old. This was like a VHS.
Definitely giving me Queen Latifah, UNITY.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So it's like, and in fact, what she is experiencing, what she's going through, what's her truth at that period is probably not even anywhere near as left of the truth of today.
Right.
So like it's not going anywhere closer to what she's saying, but in fact it has gone even farther away. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Because I think when she's talking about like there's only two sexes. Is that what she said? There's only two sexes. There's not three genders.
She said, yeah. She said it's not three genders.
There's not three genders. There's only two sexes. Like that would be a more conservative view, right, than where we are now in 2020.
Yeah.
So if someone in 2020 was listening to this and they were living their truth as maybe what they thought was a third gender or fourth or fifth, whatever, that her statements can be destructive to that person. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it can be, but you know, I feel like sometimes.
Which I just think it has to be served on a platter of empathy and on a platter of.
So it's destructive because of the way she's delivering it.
Yeah, her delivery is a tad insensitive, I think, to individuals that aren't living the same experience, and I also just think it is one-sided in a way.
Okay.
But I do think it's necessary. I feel her on some things, and we were talking about just what I wrote down, like. The Caucasian race changes rules according to what they're doing. And I think when we talk about like the war on drugs or the opiate epidemic versus the opiate.
But versus the crack epidemic.
The opiate crisis versus the opiate epidemic. So like, right, well, now that our Caucasian brothers and sisters are going through opiate addictions, it's become an epidemic. This is a thing. This is a world problem. Everybody, it's a health crisis.
I was thinking about the opioid crisis versus the crack.
Versus
epidemic.
The war on drugs, yeah. Versus that. But it was never defined as an epidemic until white people started going through it.
Yeah.
It was never a healthcare emergency, right?
Yeah. No, yeah.
So I get her wholeheartely when she talks about how the majority creates their own rules based on what they're experiencing, and they're wholly different, and they lead to wholly different responses.
That's a fair point. All right, listen, I'm gonna wrap up the video right now.
Woo!
This is
a
good
video. Mike.
Now, would you send this?
Did you submit that?
Would you send this video to your friends?
To my friends?
Yes.
Yes, because I think they can swallow it appropriately.
Hey.
Hey.
Which one?
I don't see now.
Questions, comments, concerns. Y'all already know what to do. Mediocre tutorials and reviews at gmail.com. Show your boys some support. I got a Patreon for those that don't know. We be up there talking.
Yeah.
We up there talking. We got some extra content going up there, right?
Nice. Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do. Thank you so much, TT, for coming through and doing this video with me.
Thank you, man. I always feel honored.
This is this was a real one today. This was a real one today.
This is great. If you could always pick this type of content for my visits, love it.
We're going to do it. We're going to find some more like this. Shout out to you, Michael Bennett.
Shout out to Michael.
Listen. This is it right here.
Yes.
Listen. All right? We're going to do some more.
All right? We shut this down so I got his wine, because that. Until next time, YouTube. Pardon me. So peace! Oh, you want to hold on to it, girl?